sanctuary outside of this sanctuary, part of the house that Diane and I share, the house we used to share with Isabel and Michael before they selfishly decided to leave us and go pursue their own lives and dreams and that sort of thing. We love our children and then they leave. No, but it's right there, sort of that end of the day, that peaceful place to come in where sort of right where we block out the world, to have that space where we can block out the world. And we don't, into this space of our home, we don't play the news. You will never hear the news on in our space. Doesn't mean we don't read it on our various devices. I was very interested at the 8 o'clock congregation, the number of people who still get the newspaper, which is a lovely thing. So never to have that news, never to let that noise into the house. We keep the house as a sanctuary. And I'm wondering if what I'm saying resonates with any of you, that place that we have. And maybe it's a place within your home, or maybe you have your own private place to go and just to block out the world as it is. But sometimes, no matter how well we maintain our boundaries and how well we protect our safe spaces, nevertheless, still sometimes the world finds its way in. The world will find its way in. And sometimes it's appropriate that it does, as what happened on Saturday. I'm sorry. Hang on. I'm losing my mind. Friday night. What was that? I'm okay. I just forgot what day of the week it was. You would think I would know, but I often dress like this. You should know that. You should, you'll see me out and about in my, it's amazing, anyway. No, so it was Friday night. I just had to, give me a minute. So it was Friday night, I'm home, it's in the evening, I'm in the kitchen, I'm cooking dinner, because that's what I do, and it's just me, and my phone rings, and it's somebody I really like, it's somebody I really love. So I answer the phone. Friday night, dinner time, but my friend was calling to tell me a heads up to be on the lookout for an announcement that came from St. Anne's School. And I don't know how many of you have heard about what I'm about to announce to you. This is, brace yourselves. I didn't mean to lead into this with humor because there's absolutely nothing funny about what happened. So I took the call on Friday only to learn that the head of school at St. Anne's School has been arrested. He's been arrested. He's currently in prison. The Delaware State computer investigations discovered he was in possession of photographs, and let the listener hear it understand, photographs that no one should ever take and no one should ever possess. You with me? Bad. Very, very, very bad. So he was discovered. So far, we have learned that the children at St. Anne's School are safe. There is no reported incidents of misconduct. What was found on his computer, but that is, of course, sufficient. He has been fired and is in jail waiting trial. And I got that phone call, and just the horror of it, and the fact that it was Friday and I'm in my safe space, and I wasn't really ready for it. It was just a gut punch. And I'm wondering how many of us hear one more story like this, and it's one more sort of stone laid upon us, one more burden to carry, one more instance of this kind of horrific misconduct. And it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. I found this the other day too. I'm wondering if even this hit the radar. I saw an announcement of a school shooting, and I thought, oh yeah, I already know this one. I know this one. But then I read a little bit about it, and I thought, wait a minute, this isn't the one I think it is. It's an altogether different school shooting than the school shooting that I thought it was. Because so kind of commonplace now are school shootings. When was the last time they made the headlines? Again, kind of so commonplace have they become. And I have become more and more aware of this through my life and my role here. But on Friday night, when I got the news and then I read the announcement that was sent out, I spiraled for a minute. And I had to go into the living room and sit down for a minute. And I had to collect myself. And I'm wondering if any of you have had the experience of just, it's the old proverb, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I appreciate that, right? You're so fragile that one straw will break. But if only bad news came in straw-sized portions. It isn't the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the one more bale of hay with a big rock in the middle of it that broke the camel's back. The news of these kinds of things is so overwhelming if we can pause and hear it. But because kind of my defenses were down on Friday, it really overwhelmed me. So I had to sit in the living room and pull myself together because I was spiraling to a place of despair. That's where I was headed. I was spiraling down into despair. And despair is its own special feeling, isn't it? It's different. To be overwhelmed with despair. That's not depression. Depression is something else. It's not even fear or anxiety. Fear and anxiety is something else. This was despair, a sense of hopelessness, a sense that, okay, now all of a sudden it's just too big, it's just too much. It's too big, it's too much. One more piece of the suffering of the world. The suffering of the world. So omnipresent out here in the world. And then those times even when it breaks into our sanctuaries, into our peaceful and quiet spaces. Comes in perhaps at times when we're not ready for it. And despair. Do you know what I mean when I speak of despair? And I don't mean do we all think the same thing about despair, but when I use the term, does something resonate in you? A sense of what it feels like to be without hope. To be without hope. To look at the suffering and the brokenness of the world and feel so overwhelmed by it. One more thing, one more thing, one more tragedy, one more news story of chaos, of destruction, of greed, of gluttony, of disordered affections and emotions, and the violence of the world. We now, the images, that's why, again, trying to keep boundaries around, because the images, right, images out of Israel after the Hamas attack, images of Gaza now that the ceasefire has occurred, and we see the people are coming back to what basically looks like Hiroshima. If you've ever seen pictures of Hiroshima, just what was is no more. It's just rubble. It's just rubble, right? With people standing there and they're looking at a pile of concrete, and that was somebody's safe place. That was somebody's sanctuary. That was where somebody came at the end of the day for peace and refuge, for family, for release from the tensions and the chaos and the suffering and the violence and the horror that is so much a part of our news cycles, just everywhere we look. And we get it in Ultra HD now. Isn't that special? It's in Ultra HD, so we don't really miss anything in these photographs. And I think one of the things about what happened to me on Friday night was, one of the things I learned coming out of this experience was that I have become desensitized. I hate to admit that, but I've become desensitized. Not entirely. I'm not a sociopath. I haven't become completely desensitized to the news stories and the images, but the depth of feeling that I experienced on Friday evening, confronted with this one more piece of really awful news about a community that I love and have been a part of now for a really long time, since even before I started serving here at St. Anne's. I've had connections with St. Anne's School. And I realized, again, just allowing that, or I didn't allow it, I didn't really have any choice, let's be honest. I'm not like Mr. I control my emotions. But that flood that came over me, and just the awareness that I can't live in this kind of state of despair, that hopelessness. Now, it didn't help. It didn't help, I'll be honest, that none of the lights were on in the living room. And so, it sort of mirrored the darkness of the room, mirrored the darkness of my experience in that moment. That movement, because that's what despair is. That movement from hope to despair, from light to darkness. And to be overwhelmed by the world. I think we live in a chaotic reality, and we have lived in a chaotic reality now for a while. It's, again, one thing after another. I never thought in my lifetime that I would watch Los Angeles burn. And the flood of TikTok videos. So I know we're a very TikTok congregation here as I look out among you. Andrew, you're a big TikToker? Is that what you were just signaling? Not really. Good. I don't actually have an account. People send me videos, which I watch. But they were awful. People fleeing their homes. Is it Gaza? Is it Ukraine? Is it the Congo? Is it Los Angeles? Where is it? It's somewhere. Somewhere the world is on fire. And there's a lot of suffering. and there's a lot of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear about what will happen next. PTSD, I've had people relate having symptoms of post-traumatic stress syndrome, afraid to open the news or to turn it on, afraid of what they will hear, what they will see. That one more story that plunges us into that place of despair. Now, as I was sitting in my living room by myself on Friday evening, and as I experienced myself plunging down into that profound experience of despair and the grief and the sadness and the pain and the unknown, that something this awful has happened this close to home. As I sunk down deeper into that despair, I knew what to do next. And that is what literally saved me in that moment. As I was sitting in my living room in the dark, overwhelmed by the suffering and the horror and the violence of the world, as I was plunging deeper into that awful feeling of helplessness that accompanies despair, the good news is that I knew what to do in that moment. I knew what to do in that moment. And that is, I sat myself up on the sofa properly, in the proper prayer position, sitting on the couch with my back straight and my feet planted firmly on the floor. Nothing is crossed, open, hands laid comfortably in my lap. I cried out to God. Now let me be clear about the progression here, because this is really important. Before I could pray for St. Anne's School, before I could pray for Gaza or in Israel or Ukraine and Russia, or Congo or LA or any, before I could pray for anyone else, before I could do anything else, I had to pray for myself first. How important, so important. As I experienced myself sinking into that reality of despair, the first person I had to save in that moment was myself. And how many times over the years, when I have spoken to good and faithful Christians, deeply prayerful people, who say to me, and I've said this to you before, I'm going to say it again, I don't pray for myself. I don't pray for myself. I pray for other people. My ministry is to pray for others. I don't pray for myself. Well, why not? Why not? Well, I don't, I pray with my ministries, I pray for others. Or sometimes, right, sometimes there's this sense of, well, if I pray for myself, aren't I being selfish? Aren't I being selfish if I pray for myself, especially if I pray for myself first? Shouldn't I be praying for the world and doing stuff for the world? Well, maybe, possibly. But there's a fundamental truth here that pertains to all of us who comprise the Church of Jesus Christ. And that is, if we burn out, if we break as the church, burn out as the church, break as the church, become overwhelmed with despair, hopelessness, paralyzed by fear, the uncertainty about what to do next. If we, the church, burn out, if we, the church, break, such that we are not then able to be the church in the world, it won't be only we who suffer. It won't be only we, the church, who suffer. Sometimes people will say to me, wow, in this particular historical moment, the world really needs the church. Well, pick a moment in history when the world didn't really need the church to be the church. At any time in history, to have the church, the faithful, you and me, not just witnessing to the love and salvation of God in Jesus Christ with our words, as Scripture says, with our lips only, but also with our lives. And that takes energy, and it takes hope. It takes hope to find hope. And so I'm going to say this to you as I say it all the time. Do not neglect to pray for yourselves. Do not neglect to ask God for what you need from God. For God is as close to each and every one of us as our own breathing. All of the good things of God that God desires to communicate to you and to me. Literally to inspire us, to empower us, to encourage us, to heal us from the inside out so that we can be the church in this time and place. And on Friday evening, I could not be the church. I had sunk too low, and I needed the grace and the love and the power of God to lift me out of that depression, to heal me, and to strengthen me so that I could get up and finish making Diane's dinner, because that's what I did. That was the next thing that I did, is I got up and I finished making dinner. It was delicious. Okay? When I sunk into that deep depression, or that deep despair, pardon me, I knew what to do. I knew to assume the prayer position. I knew to call out in my helplessness for God, to call out in the darkness for God, to call out in that moment for God, because I knew then, as I know now, and as I communicate to you, that God is right there. God is right there, as I said a moment ago, as close to you and to me as our own breathing, and desiring to give us all that we need through the outpouring of God's Holy Spirit to be the church in this time and place, to be the witness to faith and hope and love, to let our light shine, our light to shine over and against the darkness that would seek to engulf us, the light that shines over and against the chaos that would seek to destroy us or to destroy our communities. To call on the grace and the love of God to simply cry out, help! Help me! Help me! For I am spiraling and falling in despair. Help me now. Help me now. As I surrender in that moment to the grace and the love of God. And then feeling that darkness dissipate, feeling that despair dissipate, feeling somewhere, somehow, in my exhaustion, strength returning to me, and a sense of purpose returning to me. The world, somewhere, is always on fire. The world somewhere is always on fire. There is enough violence and pain and suffering, degradation to go around. But that is not the whole story. It's never the whole story. There is always goodness and light and love in the world. And may we nourish ourselves with that light. Nourish ourselves with that love. So that we are not broken. So that we are not cast down. So that we can be the church in this time and place. It is not something we do on our own. It's something God will empower us to be. The church, Jesus Christ in the world. Communities of people committed to the healing, the reconciliation, the restoration of the world. People filled with faith. People on fire with hope. People who then can love. Who can love in the world. Who can love in the world. If any of you find yourselves overwhelmed by the world, falling from light into darkness, from hope into despair, remember the gift of your baptism. Remember the gift of God's self poured out to each and every one of us in every moment of our lives. And when we see the despair, the brokenness, the chaos of the world, to pray for it. Don't post online that you pray for it, just pray for it. But don't ever, ever forget to pray for yourselves. To pray for ourselves. If we feel the darkness of despair overwhelming, reach out. Cry out to God. And it only requires one word. We need only one word. Remember this. Remember this. Whenever we need it. From wherever we find ourselves, to cry out, help.